Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to the next part of the MTG Arena set review for War of the Spark. Today we are on to the black cards after we wrapped up the blue cards yesterday. So before we get started, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button down below, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on future videos, and of course please consider whitelisting YouTube on your adblock. So now on to the black cards. Alright, so first we have Aid the Fallen. This is pretty nice for limited, probably not constructed relevant though. You choose one or both, you return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and or return target planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is a pretty nice 2-for-1 a lot of the time in this format. Shouldn't be too hard to have one or two planeswalkers in your deck given the uncommon planeswalkers. And yeah, so later in the game this is really powerful. You probably only want like one of these because early on it's pretty bad. Even you might not even have a creature to return, and it starts getting really good when you have two targets. But as a one-off, especially in a bit slower, more grindy, limited decks, this seems like a pretty nice tool to yeah, get ahead on cards and quality. Next we have Banehound. It's a 1/1 lifelink haste. So Raging Goblin has come a long way. It now has lifelink and also is black. Yeah, don't see this card being particularly relevant in either format though, really. Neither limited nor constructed. But I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but I doubt it. The card just seems underpowered for all intents and purposes. Gotta shut off my phone. Sorry about that. And yeah, next we have Bleeding Edge. This is an amazing card. First of all, I think this will fit right into an amass constructed deck, and in limited, this is one of the premium uncommons really. For 3 mana, up to one target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, and you amass 2, so it's effectively like a 3 mana 2/2 at the very least that gives -2/-2 to another creature until end of turn. And the fact that it has a mass, so you might have played an amass card on turn 2, make a 1/1, you suddenly have a 3/3 and it can attack right away. So it's sometimes even like a 3 mana 2/2 haste and stuff. So yeah, the card gets out of hand quickly. It's really powerful. And yeah, easily good enough to make it into a mass synergies in constructed, I think. Card seems great. Next we have Bolas Citadel. It's a 6 mana legendary artifact, triple black and 3. It's kind of a different take on the whole future side, experimental frenzy type thing. You may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play the top card of your library by paying life equal to its converted mana cost rather than pay its mana. So, however, you cannot choose whether you pay mana or life. You can only or mana. You can only pay life. So, gotta make sure you're not going too low, and or have ways to recoup life somehow with lifelink and stuff like that. But we all know how powerful it is to spend something like life on playing cards. A lot of the Phyrexian mana cards are so powerful because of this, and some of them that are free if you pay life for them are banned in a lot of formats. So this has a really high ceiling, a lot of potential, and it comes with kind of a soft win condition attached to it. You can just sacrifice 10 non-land permanents by tapping this, and each opponent loses 10 life. So once you get your opponent to 10, you can just kind of blow up everything and kill them. Card seems really powerful. It's a bit expensive, but very well worth it, especially if you have a solid defensive board. The card can run away with the game real fast. Exciting to see what is going to come from this and how it's going to impact constructed, but it definitely has the potential there. But it's not an easy card to like kind of build around, because it is kind of expensive and slow and cost life, so it will warp your deck significantly, but definitely an interesting and powerful card. And in limited, it can just easily win you the game. Next we have Bond of Revival. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it gains haste until your next turn. It costs 5. Other reanimation stuff usually costs 4. But this basically comes with the haste to make up for that. Nothing too fancy here. I doubt this is going to be constructed relevant, and even in limited it doesn't seem particularly great. So yeah, just nothing too impressive here. I think reanimation type stuff hasn't been particularly great in quite some time, basically since they pulled back on how powerful and cheap it used to be, and now it's kind of so expensive that it's really worth it, and slow and takes a lot of setup, that all the hoops are not really worth what you get in the end. Then we have Charity Extractor. It's a 4 mana 1/5 lifelink. Basically, instead of 4 mana 2/5 as we've seen before, this has lifelink instead of the extra attack point, which can make it sort of better on defense, because it defends a bit better, but it also is kind of worse in the sense that the opponent can attack into it easier with more units on more boards, making it, overall probably at a similar level as the 2/5s for 4, maybe even slightly worse. Not 100% sure. I haven't seen a whole lot that lets you take advantage of the body and buff this nicely to make the lifelink matter more. So yeah, doesn't seem that exciting, but probably okay as a filler in defensive decks. Then we have Command the Dreadhorde, 6 mana sorcery. You choose any number of target creatures and/or planeswalker cards in your graveyard, and then command the Dreadhorde deals damage to you equal to the total converted mana cost of those, and you put them on the battlefield under your control. So another way of sort of converting life total into advantage. Here we get like a massive card and board advantage for 6 mana and how much ever life total we can afford. Not sure if this is going to be constructed relevant. It's kind of expensive and kind of situational, but in limited especially, this seems like a potentially pretty powerful game ender in the right decks. Next we have Davriel, Rogue Shadowmage, another 3-cost uncommon planeswalker. This time less loyalty than what we've seen before. Instead of the 5 loyalty, we have 3, but the minus is also -1 and not -2, making it effectively still activate 2 times without dying. But unlike with the -2 and 5 loyalty ones, you can activate it 3 times if you want to, and then the planeswalker dies. And Proliferate has a bit of a higher impact here, since the Proliferate automatically gives you an additional activation. So that's kind of the different dynamic here that they went for. Also, this has a fairly impactful static ability at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep. If that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, Davriel Rogue Shadowmage deals 2 damage to them. And yeah, the -1 is target player discards a card. So you play this on turn 3, opponent discards a card, then you ideally protect it. The next turn they discard another one, and then you can either like let it sit around and hope to pressure the opponent once they go low enough, or you just kill it off and turn it into like a slower, more powerful Mind Rot, which both doesn't seem bad and limited. So seems like a decent card in limited, a bit slow, not super exciting, but solid, playable in a more defensive deck anyways, and a more grindy one. A bit harder to protect on turn 3 due to the low loyalty and not impacting the board, but you can also just play it later to just kind of strip the top end of your opponent's hand, which is more desirable anyway. So this is probably a better play alongside something else later than on turn 3 more often than not. Then we have Davriel's Shadowfugue. It's basically Mind Rot for a mana more that also makes them lose 2 life. Pretty underwhelming. I don't think this is particularly playable in limited or constructed. Then we have Deliver Unto Evil. For 3 mana you choose up to 4 target cards in your graveyard. If you control a Bolas Planeswalker, return those cards to your hand. Otherwise an opponent chooses 2 of them and you get the other 2 into your hand and exile Deliver unto Evil afterwards. So yeah, either you get the two worst cards of the 4 that you chose, or like basically the 2 that the opponent wants you to have, or you get all 4 if you have a Bolas. Problem is you need a lot of cards in your graveyard, so this might be constructed playable honestly in some kind of grindy controlling deck, but then only in low numbers as like a 1 or 2 of like massive card advantage thing later. The problem also is if you have a Bolas out already, Bolas generates usually so much card advantage that this card doesn't seem that important, and without a Bolas out, the card seems underwhelming. So I'm not sure if it ends up viable in Constructed in the end. But I mean, in Limited, it's still probably a decent playable card, even though not a great one, I would guess, due to the opponent getting to choose which of the 4 cards you want you're actually gonna get. So next we have Dreadhorde Invasion, one of the cornerstones of the constructed Amass themed deck that might exist. We'll have to see how strong it is, but there are definitely a bunch of nice cards for this potential archetype, and this is one of the cornerstones. And even if you're not focusing on Amass, this card seems really good. It seems like the new Bitter Blossom in a way. It obviously works a bit different because if the opponent doesn't kill the token, it keeps growing rather than creating multiples, but it also means if the token grows to 6, it basically completely takes over the game by gaining you 6 life and just giving you back all the life you lost to Dreadhorde Invasion. It also has particularly nice synergy with other Amass because that makes it that much easier to get to 6 and get a lifelink attack in. So without a lot of Amass, this seems fairly strong, and with a lot of Amass, this card seems incredibly powerful, and I would assume this is one of the more powerful rares for Constructed to come out of the set, and I'm excited to like try and mess around with this card in various ways. And in Limited, this is also an absolute powerhouse that looks like it's easily gonna take over games pretty quickly. Just another bomb. Then we have Dreadmalkin. It's a 1 mana 1/1 menace, and you can pay 3 and sacrifice another creature or planeswalker to put 2 +1/+1 counters on Dreadmalkin. The good thing is you can use it instant speed to sack something, so you can use it to like kind of eat creatures that would die anyways. So that is nice. We had a fair share of these cards lately that couldn't do that, but the activation cost is really big. The base body is not great. The fact that it's 2 counters is making up for that to an extent, especially with the menace, like the opponent being forced to double block to block it even, and then you have the chance to kind of make the blocks miserable by activating it or just trading off and stuff. So yeah, clearly not a constructed card. In Limited, this might end up pretty decent. Probably not great, but likely at least solid, and would probably have to play with it to see how well it plays out in Limited in the end. Kind of hard to say. It might also be just like a marginal filler. Not sure here. Then we have Duskmantle Operative, 2 mana 2/2, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 4 or greater. So that's kind of nice in the sense that this has a lower chance of being kind of outclassed and useless later. Once the opponent's board grows bigger, if they don't have like some smaller or medium-sized creatures, this can get in some free damage, which can be really nice, especially in a more aggressive deck. Nothing exciting, but a decent 2-drop if you're more aggressive and better at dealing with like smaller blockers, or even have ways to buff this somehow. Next we have the Elderspell. This is kind of an interesting card. It costs double black, it's a sorcery, and you get to destroy any number of target planeswalkers and choose a planeswalker you control, put 2 loyalty counters on it for each planeswalker destroyed this way. So it is kind of narrow in the sense that it can only kill planeswalkers, so that is definitely problematic. But depending on how many planeswalkers are going to end up being in Standard, this could still be really powerful, at least as a sideboard card. I don't think this is main deck playable, but as a sideboard card, this could be powerful. but I don't think it's gonna be that likely that you're gonna get to hit multiple planeswalkers with this. But every time you do, it's a massive blowout, especially if you have your own planeswalker out. But the card seems more like cute and nice on paper, and probably is gonna play out pretty mediocrely in the end. So I'm not sure if it's even gonna make it in Constructed, even as a sideboard card. We'll have to see. In Limited, given how many planeswalkers we have, I think you always main deck this. Basically, might want to sideboard it out if your opponent has below average amount of planeswalkers, and otherwise just having like a 2-mana answer to the planeswalkers running rampant seems like a decent thing, and buffing your own planeswalkers, especially the ones that only have minus abilities. So yeah, nothing exciting in either format, but a decent role player, I would say, even though the like destroy any number of target planeswalker wording makes it look really cool and flashy. Next we have Eternal Taskmaster. It's a 2-mana 2/3 that enters the battlefield tapped, and if it attacks you may pay 3, and if you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So actually pretty powerful, especially because it's on attack, so you get to activate this at least once if you want to, making this a pretty nice 2-drop. And a 2-mana 2/3 is also a pretty solid body for a 2-drop. So yeah, pretty great 2-drop in Limited. Might even make it into Constructed, but not very likely. It is, then the bar is like pretty high these days, and I can't think of anything where you'd want this, but there is a fringe chance that this has some Constructed appeal, but it's not that likely. Then we have the Black Finale, Finale of Eternity. This one has kind of an interesting wording, because the X is kind of determining something unusual. So you destroy up to 3 target creatures. So the amount of things you can do with this basically is locked in at 3 creatures. You can only basically modify the quality of what it does by the X, which is you get to destroy target creatures with toughness X or less. And if X is 10 or more, return all creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is also kind of weird because, you know, the 10 mode has like no synergy or analogy to the regular mode. So this card seems really weird in its design. It's kind of like all over the place. But yeah, basically for 4 you get to basically play Ritual of Suit, a one-sided one. So I think if you play Ritual of Suit, you basically might want to consider this as an alternative, although Ritual of Suit can kill bigger things that cost less, like Spellbreaker, Steel Leaf Champion, stuff like that. Well, this can't, but this has like the potential to kill various sized and costed creatures later with more mana. So they are having some overlap at what they do, but still ultimately have very different strengths and weaknesses. And I guess for what you want to do, Ritual of Suit is probably still gonna be better, but maybe if you run multiple Ritual of Suits, you might want to consider swapping one out for this, depending on how the format is gonna look and stuff. So yeah, not sure what to think of this card. It seems a bit clunky and expensive. It might not even be playable and Constructed in the end, honestly, because creatures are fairly cheap these days, so their stats are going to be higher than their cost, so you're not going to get that good of a rate, and you might just have to stick to Ritual of Suit and not really bother with this. Seems like one of the weaker finales so far. In Limited, however, it's still pretty powerful. That can just kind of blow the opponent out in the late game. Early game it's actually kind of weak. Then we have the Black God Eternal, Bontu. Also one of the weaker God Eternals, the weakest we've seen so far, I would argue. The 5-mana 5/6 ManuS, which is arguably worse than a 4-mana 4/5 flying. And then when it enters the battlefield, you sacrifice any number of other permanents to draw that many cards, which I think is also kind of worse than the ability of the Blue God Eternal, or at a similar level. Both aren't that great. This one gives you a one-time advantage. How much can and do you really want to sack? Also, you're basically just effectively looting cards in play for other cards in your hand, so you're not even generating like card advantage. while the blue God Eternal's ability at least generates card advantage when it triggers. And yeah, it's just like so much below the white one, it's not even funny. The white one is just like generating massive amounts of tempo and card advantage, while this is just kind of like letting you cycle cards, permanents in play you don't need anymore, and the body isn't even better. It's like a 5/6 ManuS, while the other one is a 3/6 double strike. I don't get why the like gap in power level is so huge between some of these, but it is what it is. I mean, it's still a powerful card, you still slam dunk it in limited, but in comparison to the other two we looked at, this is pretty weak. And the white one is just like disgustingly game breaking, and this is just like, alright, it's a good fatty, fine. Like, yeah, I don't get it. But that's it. Also makes it less likely that it will see constructed play. Just more impressive things going on in constructed, really. And also how many permanents can you realistically sack to get advantage out of this. And last but not least, for the first half we have Herald of the Dreadhorde. Not a constructed card, but seems like a pretty solid limited card. 4 mana 3/2 is a bit underwhelming, but the fact that it amasses 2 when it dies makes it a pretty solid 4-drop unit for an amass themed limited deck, and even in a non-amass themed limited deck. Basically a 4 mana 3/2 that leaves behind a 2/2 token when it dies isn't terrible at all. So yeah, seems like a fine, solid common for limited. And that's the first half of the black cards. Hope you guys are enjoying the series so far. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know in the comments what you think of the first half of the black cards. Quite a mix here. Some of the rares and mythics seem a bit weak compared to their other counterparts we've looked at so far, of like sort of cycle cards and stuff. But yeah, we got more to go. We are barely halfway through the set, so we keep going tomorrow with the second half of the black cards. If you enjoyed the series, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on future content, share it with your friends, leave a comment. You know the drill. And please consider whitelisting YouTube on your ad block to help support us content creators. That would be really nice. I'm your host ManuS, I thank you for watching, and I see you tomorrow with the second half